Recording in progress.
This time I'd like to call the Crystal Council meeting to order. Let's start with roll call.
Councilmember Onessa Rosen.
Here.
Mayor Adams.
Here.
Councilmember Budashevsky.
Here.
Councilmember Cumming.
Here.
Councilmember Eidbo.
Present.
Councilmember Kamish.
Here.
Councilmember Kaiser.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We have an agenda before us. I'm looking for a motion on that agenda. Anyone? John?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
All right, thank you. Looking for a second. Teresa? Teresa, excuse me.
I'll second it.
Thank you. All members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We do have a consent agenda before us as well. I'll read that into the record. That's something usually we find routine and non-controversial in nature, and we pass in one motion. First is the approval of the minutes for the following meetings: the City Council work session from June 20th and the council meeting from that same date. Approval of the list of license applications submitted by the city clerk to the City Council. That is in the city clerk's office. Adoption of the resolution of a resolution accepting donations. Adoption of a resolution rescinding parking restrictions, and that's on the portion of Lombardy Lane east of Lakeland Avenue North. Adoption of a resolution changing traffic control at 46th Avenue and Adair Avenue North. And then adoption of a resolution authorizing special legislative appropriation application for the Crystal Cove Aquatic Center. That is our consent agenda. Looking for a motion on that.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, just to highlight, there was before you one small change to the license list. The temporary liquor license for Prism is contingent upon receipt of some additional information from them. So we do expect that, but it wasn't ready for the meeting.
So it will be contingent approval upon receipt. Got it. All right. Looking for a motion on that? Go ahead, Rajan.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
All right. Tracy?
I will second.
All right, thank you. All members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. All right, next is open forum. We allow each person 3 minutes to talk, 10 minutes per topic. And we do have one person who's wishing to speak. James, could you step forward? We ask that you state your name and your address before you start with your comments.
Sure, absolutely. James Omart, 4510 Douglas Drive North here in Crystal.
Perfect, thank you. Go ahead.
All right, so I want to talk about the dangers of Douglas Drive, especially for those who are residents on the road. I have had numerous times where people are dangerously passing me in the center lane that's intended for left-hand only. I have people speeding, bumper humping, and nearly colliding with me as I pull into my driveway. It doesn't matter which direction I'm coming from, and if I'm in the left-hand center turn lane for turning left into my driveway, if someone decides he's going to pass somebody else, I could be in danger of getting collided with head-on. So those are the issues I want to address. What I want to see for changes is more signs posted for the left-hand turn center lane so that people know that it's only for left-hand turns. More enforcement of that road, if possible, from the police department, as well as the display signs for speed, so that way people know their speed in real time. I've seen some solar paneled ones where it keeps the energy usage mitigated, and I'd like to see that. What I've done is I've gotten a list of what's happened in the last 5 years. I've asked the police department for all accidents and traffic violations in the last 5 years between the 42nd and 47th blocks of Douglas Drive. There are 88 accidents and 677 traffic violations. They're still working on getting me the reports for those. On top of it, having young children, I'm always worried about pulling into my driveway and hurting them if they're not paying attention, and these drivers are not making it any easier. My neighbor next door to me, Kiara, she was the one in the accident in February of 21 where the Uber driver lost his legs. The neighbor next to her on the other side of me, he got collided with on the passenger side, turning right into his driveway. I don't know how that happened. A few houses further down this spring, someone had their foot run over. And on the corner of 46th and Douglas, the fence on the southeast corner has been broken because someone drove through into the yard. And that's just my block. So I'd like to have these changes taken care of. I have sent an email to John, who forwarded it on to Forrest and a few of you others. So, and I've spoken with you, Adam, as well. So I appreciate your attention to this.
All right. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak during open forum? No one else approaching? At this time, we'll close open forum and move on to our regular agenda.
Thanks, James.
All right. Where to go? There it is. Next, we're going to talk about the study in imposing a moratorium on cannabis for the city. Troy, did you want to introduce that?
It would be my pleasure, Mr. Mayor and Council. Sorry, I got ahead of myself there. Well, thank you and good evening. What you have before you this evening is something we briefly talked about on the work session on Thursday. With the, as the council knows, last year the legislature adopted a relatively small number of changes that started to legalize THC edibles. And the council reacted by adopting a moratorium. In the interim, now the legislature in this last legislative session has adopted quite a substantial bill that does a few different things, one of which, of course, is just generally legalizes cannabis. But it also leaves somewhat in limbo the regulation of THC edibles between that are still existing now and will continue to engage in sales by and large through the Office of Cannabis Management becoming up and running and starting to license those sales. So there's this period of time between now and when what we call the OCM is going to be up and running, which, by the way, they're looking for a director if anyone's looking for a career change. That office needs to get up and running. There's rules that need to be developed and adopted. That office is directed to work with local governments to come up with sample ordinances, checklists, and guidance to handle the array of things that local governments potentially can become involved with the registration. And then compliance checks, there's setback requirements, time, place, and manner restrictions. So there's a whole host of things that local governments will be needing to look at over the next year and a half or so. And one of the things the legislature specifically authorized in the new legislation is for local governments to adopt interim ordinances an interim ordinance to prohibit the cannabis businesses from opening and being established during this period of uncertainty, frankly, why all this mechanism is being set up and being developed. And that is something that, in my impression, I think a number of local governments are doing just because there are so many question marks and uncertainties. The rules haven't been written yet. The guidance hasn't been developed yet. So what this will do is give the city an opportunity to study this issue so then it can start working as these guidance materials start to come out, work on developing the zoning ordinances and other regulations and procedures, frankly, that will be needed for the city to be able to handle this system, or at least a local government component of it, once that Office of OCM is up and running and starting to issue cannabis business licenses. So this ordinance you have before you this evening is based on your authority under City Charter Section 3.065 and the new statute that was adopted. It authorizes a study, places a moratorium prohibiting the establishment or operation of cannabis businesses, which are a definedly unique thing that is not THC edibles right now. So right now, of course, it's prohibited within the city. We talked about that. City's looking at developing some regulations that will regulate that in the interim. This, however, is focused specifically on those cannabis businesses, and so this would put the moratorium in place until January 1, 2025, though the city certainly would have the option, if things get up and running and the office, OCM, starts issuing these guidance materials earlier than I think they will, great. Then if we're up and running and you have and adopted the regulations, then you can pull it off earlier. But right now, I think that's optimistic, and so I would encourage you to use the full time, at least put it in the ordinance now, and like I said, you can always repeal it earlier if it becomes appropriate. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. So what you have before you is the interim ordinance, and then, just so I don't forget, the summary resolution after that.
All right. Any questions for Troy from the council? Go ahead.
One thing I thought we discussed at the work session, also having an ordinance for matching public consumption of cannabis to public consumption of alcohol. I didn't see that in here. What's up with that?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead.
That's coming. So that'll be, we just didn't have time.
You just didn't have time, okay.
To get that.
Okay.
So that'll be coming at your next meeting.
Okay.
All right.
August 15.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions from the council? Seeing none, at this time, I'd like to receive comment from the public. At this time, I'm opening a public hearing for the interim ordinance authorizing the study of imposing a moratorium on the cannabis business within the city. Is there anybody wishing to speak on this topic? Anyone wishing to speak? No indication of anybody wishing to speak, so at this time I will close the public hearing. Council, before us is a resolution. Is there any other conversation before we move to the resolution? Seeing none, looking for a motion on this. John?
I make a motion to adopt the following ordinance, ordinance 2023-03, an interim ordinance authorizing a study and imposing a moratorium of the operation of the cannabis business.
All right, looking for a second. David?
I will second that.
All right. All members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. And then the summary language, looking for a motion on that one. Go ahead, John.
Again, I make a motion approving a resolution for summary language for publication of ordinance number 2023-03.
All right, looking for a second. Go ahead, David.
I will second that.
All right. All members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Yeah, I have a tendency just to go with the same people if there's two. So don't think it's personal. All right. Next is our regular agenda. At this time, I'll read the disbursements of $25,000 or greater into the record. And there's a pretty good list here. Art Thorson, Inc. for pedestrian bridge project of $42,980. League of Minnesota Cities for Quarter 2, 2023 workers' compensation insurance for $155,133. Met Council for wastewater services for July is $138,936. Northdale Construction Company for the 2023 utility reconstruction, $314,359. Odessa for the dog park pedestrian bridge project, $395,944. SCH, or Short Elliott and Hendrickson for the reconstruction projects 2021 through 2024, $53,027. And then TA Shifsky and Sons for the 2023 mill and overlay project, number 2, $424,374. GMH Asphalt Corporation Community Center parking lot, number 1 for $517,440. Scott Ender's return of escrow deposit for 5730 Botno Boulevard, $109,800. Golden Valley Joint Water Commission for the May water charges, $219,197. Hennepin County Assessor Service through July 31st, 2023, $111,500. League of Minnesota's for the second half of 2023 property and casualty insurance, $119,416. KDV for final billing for the 2022 audit, $26,850. MinPara for employee city required contributions for pay date 6/23/2023, $68,635. IRS electronic payments for federal and FICA withholdings for same pay date, $75,785. Health Partners for June health insurance premiums, $126,565. July health insurance payments, $124,633. MinPara employee city required contributions for pay date 7/7/23 is $67,267. Total disbursements of $25,000 or greater is $3,091,847.36. Council members, any questions on any of these items? Seeing no questions. There was one in here I had a question on. Let's see if I can find it. Short Elliott, so is this kind of a cleanup invoice for 53,000? It's got from 21 to 24. Does anybody have a?
Good evening, council. It's actually, what they do is they bundle, we got 3 different invoices, and just for ease of that, they rolled them all into one.
Okay,
So 21, we're still waiting for record drawings. 22 is final closeout of the project, and 23 is under construction. And so for that line item, they just combined those 3 invoices into the one line item.
cool, thank you. All right. With that,
Some of it, yes, to your question. Some of it's just cleaning up from these previous projects.
okay, good, got it. All right, looking for a motion on this.
I'll do it.
Go ahead, Therese.
Make a motion to approve the expenditures over 25,000.
All right, looking for a second, Rosie?
Second.
Yep, thank you. All members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. All right. Our Public Works Director, Mark Ray, is here to address the council on concrete repair projects and a couple others after that. Welcome, Mark.
Sounds good. Good evening, Mayor and council members. The first item before you is our annual concrete repair project. It's just spot concrete replacement stuff, replacing some castings and some handholds, sidewalk panels, curb sections, generally from water main breaks is where those are from. In the long-term plan, $61,000 is budgeted. Our low quote was $44,000 from Cree Construction. They're actually the company that had it last year, and we've actually worked with them for a number of years. Pembroke was 78. The reason for the difference is because this is such a hodgepodge of stuff, it's bid later in the year, so Pembroke is probably quite booked out with work right now. Is probably just a function of why there's such a big price difference. I'm not going to go into this. It's just you can see how random the spot work is over the northern and southern part of the city. Here's a great example. This is from a previous project. So you had this old square casting. That's what it gets replaced with. So it's round, so it's easier to lift and obviously a smoother surface. Where we had this one that actually wasn't used anymore, and so we just totally removed it. And so that iron is no longer in the ground. So the motion before you is to authorize the contract for the 2023 concrete repair project. Are there any questions?
Questions for Mark? Seeing none. All right, looking for a motion? John?
Make a motion approving the contract for 2023 contract repair project.
All right, thank you. Looking for a second? Tracy?
I will second.
All right. All members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. You want to roll right into the next?
Sounds good. I think this next item is really a testament to the long-term planning that the council has directed staff to do over the last few years. We were actually looking at a future utility reconstruction area and flagged this location we'll be talking about for a number of potential issues. It's a sanitary sewer main. that serves the Veracruz, Vailcrest area, so just south of Bassett Creek there. The main actually runs on the Highway 100 side of the sound wall, so to access two of the manholes, we're actually out on 100. It goes underneath the Bassett Creek culverts under 100, and it's a very flat grade. So there's a variety of challenges. So you can see the alignment here is those orange dots that kind of just run straight north there and then turn to the left. So the proposed contract, or the proposed professional service agreement, is to look at alternate alignments so we can plan when we come into this area to do our utility reconstruction project in the late 2020s. Look at different alignments or the ways to deal with some of the issues here. So we reached out to TKDA. They've done a lot of experience, a lot of work with MCES on this. Got a proposal from them to deal with the comprehensive, not only of just where the construction is, but we also have to go under a creek. So you have watershed, you have MPCA with contaminated soils where we're digging. There's also public waters in the Bassett Creek. So just a lot of factors that we have to navigate through to see if there's a better alignment for the sanitary sewer main. The cost is just under $41,000. The funding will come from our long-term plan for this project. And I do also want to note, we got a grant earlier this year for inflow and infiltration reduction from MCES, which will go back into the sanitary sewer fund. So basically we got a grant that'll help cover this cost and help float it before our late 2020s reconstruction. So the item before you is a motion authorizing the professional services agreement for sanitary sewer alternate alignment analysis. And I will say, once we sort through this and get some options, we'll come back before you, because depending on what we see as the best option, we'll need to talk to the neighbors potentially or see if there's impacts to the park. So there's just a lot of questions right now, and so the point of this is to help us work some of those questions to identify the best solution, not be under a time crunch, because the construction deadline is not till late in 2020. So, yeah.
All right. Go ahead, John.
How much of the grant is available to cover the cost of this project?
All of it. So we got 68,000. The project cost is 40, just for this study part of it.
And that's well within the guidelines of the grant itself.
So the grant, it's actually for work we've already done to reduce inflow and infiltration.
Okay.
So we're just now finally getting the money, even though it's actually 2020 is when the grant cycle was. And since it's all just going into the utility fund, we're fine, is the answer for covering that.
Did you get your answer?
Let me, okay, so.
We've spent money.
So the way MCS works is they actually get state bonding funding to reduce
Okay.
inflow and infiltration.
Okay.
So over a 2-year period, they say, what have you done? So we've lined sewers, we've replaced sewers, as per recon, we've lined manholes. So they say, okay, great, good job. Based on what you've submitted in all of the other metro cities, your allotment is 68,000. Thank you for doing this. Please continue the good work. So that's where we get that money.
So it's something where you have to show what you've spent on work you've
Correct.
done already, and then they basically base their grant on that amount.
Exactly,
Okay.
correct.
So it's not a matter of us, like, we've already done this work, and now we're getting the money, we're gonna spend it on something else. It's not like that at all.
Correct. I mean, they want us to keep up reducing inflow and infiltration, which, because this is actually a study of replacing a main that goes underneath a creek, is very much in alignment with what their goals are.
That sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah. A lot of challenges down there.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember some water issues down there when we did relay pumping. All right. Any other questions? Seeing none. Looking for a motion. Go ahead, John.
I guess I asked a question. So I make a motion authorizing professional services agreement for sanitary sewer alternative alignment analysis.
All right, thank you. Forrest?
Second.
All right. All members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next item.
Stay on track and keep chugging along. So earlier this year, BNSF reached out to actually a whole bunch of cities in Hennepin County saying, hey, the crossings are bad, but we have a great deal for you. We'll replace it this year and you'll pay us this much. We said, well, that's not quite how we work as the city. So we got them to delay it till next year so we could budget for this in our normal process. The reality is we don't have a choice, because I asked that question. They say, well, we closed the road is the alternative they proposed. So they're great partners. So now in the budgeting process, you'll see we've allocated money for the surface replacement at Corvallis with BNSF. And I will say they're working with Hennepin County for Bass Lake Road and a whole bunch of other, Brooklyn Park, Maple Grove, Robbinsdale, the other ones I've even heard about for similar efforts. So it's pretty straightforward. They'll replace the tracks, we cost share basically the concrete cost, and then the city's responsible for providing traffic control as well as the asphalt patching up to the concrete crossing. So the line item you'll see in our budget is $75,000 because of that other stuff we'll have to cover as part of the deal. That's pretty much it. If there are any questions.
All right, go ahead, John.
So up until now, Burlington Northern Santa Fe has been repairing this, their railroad crossing throughout the city, correct?
So, not this one that I'm aware of, but they did the one down at West Broadway a few years ago.
Yeah.
We never talked to them about it.
Yeah, they did that one, and they also, I've seen them make repairs on 42nd, where they, as well.
Yeah,
So they've done that one.
sort of, yeah, they
And-
threw some asphalt down there is my understanding.
So, yeah, exactly. They filled in it because the rebar was showing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, why do they need to cost share with each city along the line?
That is a great question.
This is a company that makes, that their revenue is $24-25 billion a year.
Actually, I looked it up. They had a record profit last year because I
Yeah.
was curious about that.
And another thing on top of that, last year they went to Congress and Congress allowed them to add their fuel costs to their bills. And that was another $240 million to their bottom line. That they were, so they're coming to us and they're squeezing us.
Well,
for-
and just because you've ripped open this Band-Aid,
Yeah.
I got this email when they
Yeah.
had a train derailment elsewhere in the state
Yeah.
at the same time.
So what if we say no?
So if they say no, they'll show up with concrete Jersey barriers, they'll close the road and say, thank you very much. As you can see, we have a railroad right away here, and this is our right away, you cannot cross here, so
Can we-
it's on you, and if you want to come back, you'll have to pay the full cost to reestablish that, if we allow it.
And so, I would really like to hold off on making a decision on this. I'd like to hear from Commissioner Lundy first. If this is, if he's in agreement that this needs to be done. If we can go on
Well,
with this.
so what I will say is the board, Hennepin County Board is getting this same grant, or this same agreement in front of them to vote on, I think, next week. So they're in the same position that we are. And obviously it's the railroad, so it's really federal authority and.
I understand that, but we also have representatives that they go to, that they lobby all the time in terms of various, how would you say, right-of-way, agreements. And for them to come back to us now and all of a sudden say that we need to cost share this particular location, this is their business. I mean, can we, before we go ahead with this thing, I would much rather hear from our representatives before we make any decision on this.
So I actually reached out to congressional staff as well when this all started, just to say, hey, do we have a choice? What's the play here? And the response is no. This is how it
You
works.
mean the Congress has already agreed to this?
Well, they don't agree to it.
I
It's
don't agree to it.
this is because first there was the railroad, right, Bert? How's that phrase go? We're the most important thing ever, or something like that. You were telling me about. I see City Manager Bells wants to chime in as well. I completely am like. There were a lot of direct emails. John, would you say is that a terse way of describing our conversation with the railroad?
Yes.
All right, Adam?
Just for the council's information, kind of what Mr. Ray had just started to discuss. Staff did push back quite a bit, and to Mark's credit and staff's credit, our portion was actually less than what some others have been stuck with. But it was, they're not interested in working further. We did get we were able to accomplish them to cede some of the cost. It started out, the initial was much higher. And so I'll give credit to staff to getting a better deal than we were initially proposed. I discussed this a little bit with Councilor Eidbo on the capital steps during the legislative session. This was the issue that I was referring to. So this has been going on for a few months, several months. That I don't know how much more ability we have to get a better deal, they're gonna take their ball and go home. And I mean, short of the congressional changes, I don't know what our options are.
They've cost taxpayers a tremendous amount of money with with the light rail realignment. I mean, that project's been in the works for 27 years, and then they all of a sudden decided that, oh no, we're not gonna play along anymore. I mean, look at all the work that's been done. All that money has been wasted because of them. Now they wanna come back to us and they wanna squeeze us for some more. I mean, I'm not pleased at all.
Well, I don't think anybody here is pleased about it.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to the connection that they were gonna do in Crystal, we had a lot of support from senators, from Hennepin County, from our representatives. Everybody was on board for that particular thing. And they were able to accomplish something that really has never been accomplished before. I don't think our congressional lineup is going to step forward for that type of fight for this issue. And I think without it, we have nowhere to go.
We did offer that we could work together and maybe Met Council would build them a whole new crossing as well as railroad tracks. They didn't seem interested in that.
What about also hours of operation? I mean, they seem to, have you talked to them about that?
Yeah, I feel like I think it's the closings for a week because the concrete has to cure. So they'll be in there, they'll pour it, it'll have to be closed for the week. Well, I think it's a full week of removals and then pour, and then it'll reopen.
So a week worth of, nice sound sleep, and not them,
Oh no! Don't worry. We still have West Broadway crossing right down the block. But yeah, they'll only work during the day. I don't think it'll be any overnight work.
And then, so are they also going to charge us for West Broadway as well?
That's a county road.
Okay. So they're talking to the county about that. So are they going to?
And Bass Lake Road.
And Bass Lake.
Correct.
Okay.
It took a while for them to understand that aspect of everything. And that one of the crossings actually wasn't even in our city. Anyway.
All right. Well, good work then. Go ahead.
So if we said no, and you said that they're gonna close the road, like the whole road or that section?
No, they would see those little yellow lines that go parallel. They put up some Jersey barriers there and say, "We'll see you later."
But then ultimately they couldn't use the railroad.
No, they use the railroad.
Oh, they can.
They would just remove the road part of it. They would take away the crossing aspect of it.
Gotcha.
And based on their discretion, maybe give it back or not if we come back to the table.
Because it would basically reset the clock on the crossing. Yeah, I'm totally with you on this whole thing, but I've tried. There's no option.
All right. Any other questions? Who wants to make this motion? John?
You asked the question.
I can make the motion. I certainly can.
Oh, here we go. This will be interesting.
Oh, boy. I make a motion authorizing the crossing surface installation agreement with Burlington Northern Santa Fe.
All right. Looking for a second. Go ahead, David.
I will second that.
All right. Thank you. All members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Let's do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Kaiser.
Nay.
Councilmember Onessa Rosen.
Aye.
Mayor Adams.
Aye.
Councilmember Budaszewski.
Nay.
Councilmember Cummings.
Aye.
Councilmember Idebo.
Aye.
Councilmember Kamish.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. Thank you. All right. Now the drought.
The drought. So I want to be clear, we are not imposing restrictions tonight. We are just setting the stage for that based on the trend. So I'm going to lead with that, and I'll hit on that a few times. As you're probably aware, Hennepin County is in routed drought. I believe that has now actually increased to severe since last week. Flows of the Mississippi River are trending downwards. There's a statewide drought plan, actually from 2009, that establishes a whole bunch of thresholds for things that happen. For us, the controlling factor is the Mississippi River at Highway 610 in Brooklyn Park is where the measuring gauge is that dictates what we do. So again, no actions proposed, we're just setting the stage. This is kind of a large map from the drought plan. That area listed 0701 Mississippi headwaters is where the watershed is, so anything that theoretically falls in that area generally runs to the Mississippi, which is where we draw water. So in summary, we want a terrain in that area. to get the flows up. This was a screenshot from yesterday, so you can see the flow is trending, and you can't tell with the small font there. It's 2,840 cubic feet per second, which is the measure for flow. If it drops below 2,000 cubic feet for 5 continuous days, that's where, per the drought plan, restrictions have to kick in. So if this trend continues, which we foresee it to do, we will have to, we started the conversation today with communication staff from the neighboring cities. We're gonna start ramping up communication that, hey, if we drop below this 2,000 cubic feet per second for 5 continuous days, restrictions will have to go into effect. Again, we're coordinating between all the Joint Water Commission cities. We anticipate this is going to be happening in the near future. So you'll start to see education coming out here potentially late this week or next week, leading up to the anticipated restrictions going into effect. So again, if the flow drops below 2,000, you cannot water between noon and 6 p.m., and then it authorizes staff to implement additional restrictions per the Joint Water Commission agreement with Minneapolis. Section 9 is what calls that out. Basically, whatever restrictions Minneapolis puts on their residents, we have to do the same to bring usage down. And then it authorizes the current administrative citation process for enforcement. Obviously, we always do education first, warning, fines, and then fines get progressively more intense if we have repeat violations. This approach is the same thing we did back in 2021 when we were in the same situation. So nothing's different from that time to this time. So the item before you is a motion to approve the resolution establishing the drought warning phase response actions. Again, we are not starting restrictions now. We're just setting the process in place should we have to do that. With that, are there any questions?
Council questions? Tracy, go ahead.
When we are under restrictions, does that apply to newly established lawns?
I believe newly established lawns and some new trees are exempt. And there's some things I have to go back. We have a frequently asked questions page I have to go back and refresh on, but I believe there's some exemptions for some new planted stuff.
Okay. I recall that too. Any other questions? Raji?
When we did this in 2021, how many violations did we see?
So in 2021, we stuck with, really, we just did in education only. So we did a lot of flyers. We didn't actually administer any fines because I believe it was only in place for 2 to 3 weeks at the time before we got some rains to pull us out of that.
Okay.
However, I think in 2021, it was like late August, early September is when those went into place. So we're a little bit earlier than that, unfortunately.
Okay. Yep. Forrest, go ahead.
So if we approve this resolution, is this kind of like for perpetuity? So like if next year there's a drought, or this is just this season?
So I would need to ask Troy and the lead. My intent is it's only this season.
Okay.
I don't know if Troy has a different take on that, but my intent is it's only for this calendar year, for how long this would stay in place.
Troy, do you have an answer?
So, Mr. Mayor, I guess I don't see anything that, in a quick look here, that expressly limits it to this year. But we certainly can look at that, and this is a resolution. You're not enacting an ordinance or anything like that. I mean, you've already enacted both the water sprinkling limitations that are referenced here and the emergency provisions. So we certainly can look at this, and if you want to take a different tack next year, you certainly can do that.
And I should note the resolution is basically the same one we passed last time, and we're back here before you all, so.
Mr. Mayor, just to finish up, I mean, I think what I'm hearing and my recollection is that this is just essentially bringing it to the forefront that, you know, we're in a situation here. I think we did work on it back then to help clarify that these are the things that will happen because we anticipate getting into a situation where we have to enact some of these greater restrictions. So I think it really is traditionally been used as that we're getting into this stage, so let's make everyone aware, so.
All right. Raji?
Sorry, it's Taji.
Taji, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Oh my gosh.
What does public engagement or public outreach look like?
So we have, obviously social media is the biggest one, and then we actually have a flyer that if we see people while we're out just tooling around, like we'll give it to our staff, and if we see somebody out watering, like, hey, here's a flyer. just as a heads up, and then if enforcement starts, I think the flyer's modified a little bit, but it's still that same education.
So there's not like a mass mailing or something that?
No, we don't do mass mailings, because the concern, right, is if it rains, it could come off. And so, the timeliness, we also use our message board would be another way of trying to put it out there. And that's one of the challenges, right, is that if it rains and you jump back up, then it's over. And so, if it bounces, that would be like the worst case scenario.
Okay.
So.
All right. Anything else? All right, looking for a motion. Yeah, go ahead, Forrest.
I move to establish a resolution establishing drought warning phase response actions.
All right, thank you. Looking for a second. Taji?
I'll second that.
All right, all members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. All right. Thank you, Mark. Quite a list there. Next item is the variance from lot width and density requirements allowed on a two-family dwelling at 4309 Colorado Avenue North, and John Sutter is here to address the council. Welcome, John.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. So this is the first slide here is the mailing radius, the 500-foot mailing radius, and just showing how we notified the adjacent property owners and residents, as well as the other ways that we sought public input on this. Here's a recent aerial photo of the property. It's basically a side-by-side two-family dwelling or duplex. The two units were originally built as mirror images to each other back in 1984. And here is a survey showing the location of the building on the lot. So again, it was built in 1984 as a side-by-side two-family dwelling. By 1991, it had been purchased by a group home operator who proceeded to remove the interior walls, opening it up and making it a very large single-family home for use as a group home. Due to zoning ordinance changes after 1991, a two-family dwelling is no longer permitted on the property, but only because the lot is not quite wide enough and not quite large enough to meet our minimum lot width and density requirements for a two-family dwelling in the R1 district. It's close, but not quite there under the current code. The group home operator has recently sold the property, and the new owner is seeking variances so he can restore the property's original design as a side-by-side two-family dwelling. So those two requested variances would be to reduce the minimum lot width for a two-family dwelling for this particular parcel from 80 to 76 feet. In other words, it's about a 5% variance. And then also to increase the maximum density for this site from 6 to 7 units per acre. The Planning Commission held the required public hearing on July 10th and determined that the variances meet the requirements of code and recommended approval. So tonight, the action requested is for you to adopt the resolution approving the variance as recommended by the Planning Commission. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thanks, John. Any questions, council? John, go ahead.
So the current lot width is 76 feet, correct?
Yes, the lot width would still be 76. It's just for this lot, we'd be reducing the minimum required from 80 to 76 for this lot.
Just only for this lot?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? John, go ahead.
And so everything else with their proposal has been straightforward and good? And the planning commission thought it was great, all that?
Yeah, there were one of the 9 members voted against it. Didn't necessarily, in the discussion at the time of the vote, state their reasons, but 8 of the 9 members voted in favor of the variance. Okay. And as far as staff is concerned, I mean, from sort of a physical sense, I mean, we feel that this makes sense. I mean, it was built as a two-family dwelling. The neighborhood sees it as a two-family dwelling. That's what it looks like. It's just sort of an accident of history that for a period of time it was owned by a group home operator for whom it made sense to make it a giant single-family house. But in reality, that's not the way this structure was built, and the best outcome from staff's point of view is it should go back to being what it was originally built as.
All right. All right. looking for a motion. Tracy?
I will make a motion approving a resolution approving variances for the property located at 4309 Colorado Avenue North.
All right, looking for a second. Therese?
I'll second that.
All right, all members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. All right. Thank you, John. Welcome John Elholm, our Recreation Director, for our next topic, which is the Aquatics Center. So, John, go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. We're here to talk about professional services for the Crystal Cove Aquatic Center. You may recall we were here about a month ago talking about the Aquatic Center, and this is pretty much the same slide that we had up then. But what we talked about then is in February of 23, we hired consultants to review the public input we had received and begin concept design. We shared that at the last meeting and indicated that the next step in the process is to hire professional services to bring it into the actual design process. Just a reminder, the Crystal long-term plan has $3.5 million for Grogan Park improvements. And previous years that had been divided into the building and in the pool, and they were combined and just kind of generalized in that fashion. We also were fortunate to receive a legislative appropriation of $2.35 million for a total of $5.85 million. A potential budget for the project for the pool structure is $5.1 million, and that came from the estimate from our consultant and their professional services number, as well as a little bit extra, 10% contingency. That was pulled together for that resolution that was passed earlier. There's certain criteria that you have to follow, and you need to make sure that we have enough in there when you go to the Office of Management budget to make sure that we have a sufficient budget in there. Building and lobby facade is about $500,000. That's the same number we had last month. And then unallocated of that is about $250,000. So the professional services we're seeking approval on tonight are for U.S. Aquatics for the pool and pool amenities. They are the firm that we hired back in 2021 to do an assessment of the pool. And so they have some pretty good knowledge of the workings of the facility. They're local. And then we actually did get 2 other proposals. They were both from out of state. And they clearly did not have a knowledge of our facility here. And they actually, I think because of that, proposed a higher fee. So this seemed like the best fit for our project. And then HCM Architects, building, lobby, and facade. They are familiar with this building. They went through and reviewed fixtures and things like that in the building over, I think, early spring. They also prepared the preliminary design concepts that we shared last month. So U.S. Aquatics proposal is $262,300, and HCM Architects is $75,575. So the recommendation tonight is to enter into a resolution with HCM Architects in the amount of $95,800, and with U.S. Aquatics in the amount of $262,300, and those are separate resolutions.
All right, any questions?
I'm sorry, in the existing resolution, I'm seeing 75,575. Am I not reading this correctly?
Oh, I think I have a typo in there. The resolution is right.
Typo on the slide.
Typo on the slide.
Okay, yep, okay, I see the.
My apologies.
Okay.
So what was the, I'm sorry, I missed what you said.
That's wrong.
That's wrong. What is that?
75.
So it's correct on this slide.
Okay, thank you.
I did a cut and paste. My apologies. I think there was an old number in there, so
And it's correct on the resolution, which is
it's
good.
correct on the resolution.
Yep.
So can we go back to that slide that shows the separation between the pool and the building?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when we started talking about the pool, it was at $3 million, and then shortly after we got to $3,500,000. And that was because there were some other things that we thought that was important. So the legislative appropriation is $2,350,000, and we added that. It kind of looks like that's just the funding source. All right, so the pool structure, when I look at that, it's at $5,100,000. You know, I don't know how we got to 5 million on the pool structure. Can you answer that for me?
Yes, so the U.S. Aquatics is familiar with our pool facility, and admittedly, this number is higher than it will end up being. Last week, we went through training on Monday on how all this legislative funding works, and I talked to Deed, and I talked to the Department of Administration and MMB. And in the application process, we start with the estimate from our consultant. And that's admittedly a little bit high, because what they explained to me is we went in and we wanted to make sure we covered everything that you might want to do. We didn't want to come back later and say, oh, geez, if you want to take a look at that, we're going to charge you more. So it's a little bit high for the budget. And everything we sent to the state legislature had a $3 million number, and I have to include that in all my paperwork. So I didn't want that discrepancy to be too large and say, well, you said you had 3 million and now you only have 2.5 million. So I kind of came up with kind of a number that I think is going to be a better number for the paperwork I need to send in. I also have to include the budget provided by U.S. Aquatics, which is what is in the proposal. So there were just a lot of things that lined up, and that's why the resolution was what it is. And for this, I just matched that number, just so we're consistent. So I don't think we're going to be that high in reality. This is just a budget number so that we have, you know, some room to figure out what we need to do.
Okay, so what did you learn about, you know, the strings attached to this, how we must spend it? You said you'd spent some time looking for how we would have to spend that. What did you learn?
So I asked, so I asked MMB or Deed, are you going to hold our feet to the fire if I don't put $3 million in our application? And they said, no, but make sure the number's big enough so MMB knows that you've got enough money to do the project. And U.S. Aquatics, that was their philosophy when they put the numbers together. They said, we want to make sure that you have enough to do the project, because it's an old pool, there's going to be things coming up, and this is going to be an adequate number for sure. It will likely be less.
So we have like almost a $2 million difference from what we talked about when everything was approved, or, you know, as we moved forward.
Right. And the $3 million was from several years ago, and that wasn't really adjusted as we moved forward. So going to the legislature, we said we have this, but we are going to need more if we want to do this right.
The legislature isn't requiring us to spend $3 million, are they?
No, they are not.
They are not. So this money can be used first. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm assuming it's a reimbursement process, but as long as we spend the 2.35.
So just to be clear, since this isn't a bond, we don't have to have this fully obligated and on a platter before MMB will give us the money, right? Or is it, because this is a cash grant, so it's, because normally with bonding, you have to show up with it, and that's.
It's not a match.
No, there's not a match requirement.
Yeah, but there is a pre-design process. It's more complicated than, well, we learned about it last week, the whole pre-design process and how that, even just to apply for it, there's work that has to be done, which this will incorporate much of that. One of the things, just to clarify, John, is some of the other items that are part of the Aquatic Center, those are also in here.
Correct. Good point.
So that 3 million, as in the last presentation, I want to say it was 562,000 of other Aquatic Center long-term plan capital items that were part of the aquatic center in the next 2-3 years. So this is the scope of this does include everything, but as the proposal are referenced, there'll be alternate bids of certain features or services that the council or the city doesn't want to include. At that point, they'd be alternates. So it is broader than just the initial pool container that was the $3 million.
So just to be clear, so it's $4,371,500 is the work that US Aquatics will do. And then here it's showing, you know, the shell replacement, and that's probably the bulk of that, right?
So they're saying you find the number quick, so the 4,371,000, so as City Manager Bell said, last month I had two numbers. I had for the pool, and then there was about 850,000 of projects in out years that we were gonna have this project take care of. So that is one reason it went up. So the 4.7 million, or
4.3.
4.3, that's just the construction cost. And then whatever the number is the consultant cost.
Right. The 262,000 is the consulting based off of the 4.3.
Correct.
And I think, at least, you know, the concern, at least from what I'm reading, is we were told 3 million, now it's 4.371. And am I hearing that extra $1.37 is the slide refurbishment, the deep area feature renovations, the zero pool entry work, and the shade structures? Is that kind of where that extra is coming from? It's not so much that the shell replacement has gotten
More expensive.
$1 million more expensive, it's that we've added those other things?
Right, and I think they did include an inflation factor because it's a 2024 project. So it went up a little bit because of that. It also includes the 850,000 of out-year things.
So is that 10% not escalation, but it's just
The
like contingency, and not including escalation? So the escalation is
Correct.
built into this?
So they put a 10% contingency, and because of what this is, I added another 10%.
Okay.
I think that's more realistic, but I think this number is high. It's a budget number. It's not a construction cost number.
Okay, so this is, to me, this is a larger discussion than the pool. To me, this is a conversation about our budget and what we're trying to accomplish. I know I've said this before in this room, looking for a reduction in our levy this year, right? We're at a really high accepted levy. It was 14% when we started, based on last year, right? And I guess I can't bring that to the public. I can't. So we're going to be putting some pressures on staff to come and bring that down. That's one. The others I've talked about can I get through this quick?
Hopefully.
Nice comment. Did you want to talk about the levy?
Well, I think you're talking about two separate things, because this is dedicated funding for the pool.
Oh, I'm aware.
Yeah.
I'm aware.
And the levy is a completely separate item, is not connected to the pool whatsoever.
It could be based on the decisions.
But that's two separate things. I mean, to try and join them together is not relevant.
It's relevant, and we've been talking about this for years. You've been in this room about our capital expenditures, how we're going to have to take a breath after the police station build and stuff, because we had other funds that need to be rebuilt.
Right.
And I know I'm talking about operation. I know I'm talking about capital in the same breath. But at the end of the day, they're both citizen-funded events.
But this event, we cannot take any of this money to use to reduce a levy, if we had a levy for 2024, okay? So this money is dedicated specifically for the pool. It can only be used for the pool, period.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I
And so to have a
understand that.
conversation where you're trying to join the two together is inappropriate.
It is not inappropriate. It is my job.
No.
It is
No, I
my
mean,
job.
No, you have to look at it as two separate events.
Okay,
right?
I'm gonna get through the points that I want to
Okay,
make.
I think I made my point clear already.
Yeah, you sure have. So that's one big item. And then the other item is our fund balance. Our fund balance, based on operating, we're supposed to be at 45%. We're down by $2 million. We got to figure out how we're going to find $2 million to get back to our own policy. So that's one of my concerns as well. There's some other things that have happened in terms of, I guess, fixing our EDA. I think staff is well at hand and on it, but we had half of our city manager's position being paid for by the EDA. I don't know. I did not approve something like that. That never came before us. That kind of behavior is something that we need to fix. Better savings. We've been talking about savings in this council for, my gosh,
We're good savers.
10 years.
We're good savers.
And we're very good savers when it comes to parks and rec. We're doing quite well in terms of our utilities. In terms of the rest of the stuff, we don't have good funding for those. We don't have good funding mechanisms. I've been arguing for more and more capital savings in that realm so that we can actually pay for the projects that we have on what is a very aggressive plan. So our budget for our planning for capital assets is quite aggressive. So we're going to fall short if we maintain the pace that we're at. So these are things that are kind of taking a big high-level picture as to what we got to try to fix here. That's one of them that we've been dealing with for years. And what did we do? We did 1% per year for parks and recs, and we finally got another 1% for roads. So I think we need to step that up at some point. Maybe this is not the year, especially with looking at the 14% increase, which, granted, I'm not taking away from staff in their work because I know they've brought it down from that. And we'll hear more about that. So another item is slowing our spending. So I would propose that we kind of pull back on this project a little bit in terms of what we're doing is counterintuitive to what we're trying to accomplish with the savings. We're accelerating things. We're not taking a breath. We're actually accelerating things. I would just assume that we just take everything that's planned and do it then. I know we have some things from just in the near-term years, 25 and 26, that we pulled into this. There's nothing saying we can't still do that on schedule. And I understand there are some things that it's easier when you get the contractor in rather than bring in another contractor. But seriously, we've got a ton of work to do in terms of making ourselves healthy again. $3,000 $3 million to $5 million is a huge leap. And to me, I think there's money that we could literally take and appropriate from capital and fix some of our issues. We need $2 million to adhere to our policy. To me, since the legislative appropriation is something that we can use first, I think there's room for some of that money to be able to be brought back and brought into operations to help us with those issues. Go ahead.
Just a couple of points of clarification. Is there any way, I think, John, this is for you, is there any way we could lose that 2.35 from the state? Or is that kind of guaranteed?
No, I think so. They I forget what the term they use, but we have to show that that the project is doable. So we have our, estimates and things from our engineer. So that's kind of what I based our response to them on.
Meaning, based on the budgeted costs we see here, we'll be able to fulfill the full amount, in addition to
Right.
okay.
Right.
if we,
But then if we get into planning and we say we don't want to do the slides and things, we don't have to do the slides. So this just gives us room to
and that doesn't.
look at all those things and find out what are the actual costs.
Okay, and that shouldn't affect the 2.3 from the state if we pull back in different areas
No, we
to
can,
lower the overall costs.
right.
Okay, I just want to make sure, we're not, there's no risk of.
Yeah, there are ways to modify your budget.
Yeah.
And I'm not fully dialed in on that yet.
Yep.
So-
And then the 3.5, is there flexibility with how we use, like, is that money solely for this pool project? Or are there other ways that we can use that?
So it was initially in the budget as pool and front facade entryway. When there was a discussion on should we redo the pool or do something else, it was combined into the title Grogan Park improvements in case we decided to not do the pool and do something else. It's just a number on a spreadsheet with a label. I mean, things could change.
Okay, so there's flexibility with how we use that 3.5.
That's why I have unallocated on here, just,
Okay.
So.
And then I have one other question.
Go ahead.
Question. So as we get into the design stage, I assume we're going to see a few different options for both, and I think this was laid out, but a few different options for both the building and the pool.
Correct.
I assume obviously different price tags will be associated with the different options. Just so that it's clear for me, like I want to ensure that we're seeing kind of the bare minimum options. I think the need is for us to fix the leaking shell of the pool. And then, of course, we can explore other options if we want to add other things. I just want to ensure that as we're going into this, I would like to see like bare minimum, this is like the minimum that it would cost, and then I'd like to go from there.
right. And this proposal allows them to look at all those things and bring back information.
Great.
Talking about bare minimum, when I look at that aquatic center, I looked at the plans and I saw the designs of a nice looking lobby, really stepped up lobby. Why do we even need a lobby? I mean, you go through the door, you go through and get into the locker room, and you're in the pool. I mean, to me, some of those improvements on the building,
Well, there's a service counter, so people stop there to pay their fee to get in.
I understand that,
Okay.
that's a desk, but to have high windows and two-story windows, and to have an architectural event for something that doesn't need it, in my opinion. And second, for a pool that's used 10 weeks a year, I think that's an awful lot of money to be making an architectural statement. And it's something that I can't support that line. So, number 6, I'm gonna go on, just because I forgot one of the items that I was thinking of. Some of the pressure that's on our budget this year, we were over budget 8% last year. And again, we still haven't talked much about being over budget. It's not supposed to be a thing, being 8% over budget. Some of those costs, I know there's justification and there's reasons and whatnot for them, but it adds additional pressure the next year. Some of those things, if they can't be reeled back, we're asking staff to reel back what was an effective actual spending, 8% more than what the budget was. And for this budget, we want them to bring it down from 14 to something that's more palatable, that we can actually deal with, with our public, right? That's part of a hump they have to recover from as well. So these are big picture things that we need to be very, very considerate about as we go into these budget conversations in August. One of my concerns about this and approving this in a budget is if we approve a $5,100,000 budget, when's it going to come back to us? Is there any obligation for it to come back to us? Is there? Once it's in the budget? Isn't that a go? Am I missing something here?
Well, as designs are prepared, we bring the concepts to the council.
It's what?
We're gonna be working with them hand in hand throughout the whole process.
Like what we did Becker Park, that was a $3 million project. We periodically came back to the council and said, hey, here's some options. We could do this, we could do this. What are your thoughts? I mean, this will be the same way.
That went well.
What's that?
Becker Park,
Yeah, look at Bassett Creek. We're not getting that behavior in Bassett Creek, and that's why my concern is you approve the money and it doesn't have to necessarily come back. So which way is it gonna be? It's gonna be that we're gonna be hand in hand back and forth with this. I'm really hoping that there's some help to our financial situation somewhere in these numbers. That's my goal. It's not to torpedo the project, it's let's do the project in a realistic way. Yeah.
Is there a way to approve it, but then put in there some sort of stipulation that each item has to be approved by the council? If that makes sense?
Yeah, well, to go out for bids and things, that would come here.
it would come to us.
Right, and typically on things like this, when there are a lot of questions, we would say, here's your base bid, and then here's a bunch of alternates. And so we can get then actual costs on those alternates, on like different pool features, things like that. So when this was done 18 years ago, there was a base bid, and there were, I think, 10 alternates. And at that time, none of the alternates were chosen. One of them was the deep end of the pool, another one was the front entrance lobby of the pool. Since then, most of the other ones have been done, but that's just kind of a typical way on things like this. You could do a base bid with a laundry list of alternate bid items, and then we have the ability to pick and choose.
Can you help me with some of the technical parts of the pool? It was US Aquatics that did the study on our pool. They said that our deep end was okay.
The deep end was at the end of its life, but everything else was in great condition. So they looked at all the mechanicals. Back in 2021?
No, yeah, 2021.
Right.
So it was the deep end that was bad? I thought it was the main body of the pool.
Yeah, well, the deep end, lap lanes, that whole the oldest part of the pool, the original structure.
Okay, so what did they say was really good, was in good shape?
The zero depth pool, the mechanicals, because those were all changed 18 years ago.
Okay,
We changed the different kind of filter types and did a lot of.
and we don't have to change the scope of that, we don't have to touch that stuff, or do we?
No, the plan is not to touch that. And the plan is not to make it any bigger because all the fixtures in the building relate to how big the pool is. So the pool container size, we're not looking to make that any bigger.
So, for the $3,500,000 quote or concept that we were talking about last year, are there any improvements to that? Or is that just the base pool that we were talking about, fixing the pool? And are we doing some improvements in terms of any type of mechanics?
Not so much mechanics, but we went through a public process and they said, we would like your pool to be shallower in spots because there's a certain age group that doesn't use it. So, part of that will be looking at the depths of the pool.
Yeah.
Things like, we'd really like to have a climbing wall. I don't know how much that costs right now, but as we go through the design, we can look at that and maybe there's other feature.
Climbing wall so the climbing wall was in that number?
Yeah, it's got, I think, $250,000 for features to have things like that, because that was something that directly came out of our public process. So we would
No,
look
I
at
understand the
that.
public process, and I understand that there's a lot of wants, but when we entered the public process, it was about fixing the pool. It wasn't about, okay, public, let's have what do you want us to do here?
Right, so that's the case where we could go out for bid and say the base is just to do the pool. Alternate one is to put in a climbing wall, and then that would come here for, and we can select different options. So we have a drop slide that's pretty old, so one of the things we'll look at is, does it make sense to put that back in a new pool, or do you replace it, or, what do you do with that? So there's a lot of things like that we'll be looking at as we get into the design.
All All right. I think there was a question, I don't know, maybe Tracy, did you ask it about, was the $3 million assigned to, was that?
Yeah, I asked that question.
Yeah. My understanding was, before the pool came up, it wasn't, but it got put into the plan as soon as we had the problem with the pool. So it wasn't necessarily saved up because we knew this was coming. It was applied to it. So I would have given you a different answer. I would have said that, no, it wasn't initially, but staff decided to allocate, as they did the long-term plan, it to that. I think that's probably a more accurate answer.
Yeah.
So as of today, could we use that 3.5 for?
Yes.
Okay, I think I heard John say that as well, so I think,
Okay.
that's good.
Yep. All right. That's all I had.
Care to make the motion?
I don't.
You asked all the questions.
Actually, I got another question. I don't quite get why that number has to be so big in the budget for getting quotes. You know, it's 5
Oh,
million.
for getting quotes, you mean for the professional services?
Yeah, I mean, potential budget, pool structures, 51. It's because everything's accelerated. Is that why that's?
Right, the part of that is the thing, so while you're in there doing things, like the zero death pool, I think needs a diamond coat, you do that every 15 years or so. We could do that while we're in there doing the same product probably in the new pool.
Yeah. And a lot of those projects are independent. They can stand on their own and they can be done.
They could.
Yeah. Okay, let's not lose sight of that. All right. You really want me to make a motion? I can make a motion. Moved by the mayor, resolution support a design and construction document preparation for the building entrance at the Crystal Cove Aquatic Center. Looking for a second.
I second that motion.
All right, all members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, let's see where we go.
Is there two?
Second motion. Oh, man. What a rookie. Second motion is resolution in support of the design and construction document preparation for the pool structure and related features at the Crystal Cove Aquatic Center. I make that motion. Looking for a second.
I second that motion.
All right. All members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Nay. Go ahead.
I have a question. Did you say nay on the first one as well?
I didn't.
You did not, okay. All right.
So let's do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Onessa Rosen.
Aye.
Mayor Adams.
Nay.
Councilmember Budiszewski.
Aye.
Councilmember Cummings.
Aye.
Councilmember Eidel.
Aye.
Councilmember Camish.
Aye.
Councilmember Kaiser.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. The reason I said no on that particular one is because I don't think the approval of the design for the lobby is something that should even be talked about, just so people understand why I voted no on that. All right.
That was the first one, wasn't it? Building entrance?
Yeah, the first
First one.
resolution was the,
Okay, so I messed that up. So everybody knows what I meant to do.
Okay, all right, okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. We got some announcements here. Crystal Frolics is July 27th through the 30th. A schedule of activities is available at crystalfrolics.org. Look for all your events there. Night to Unite is Tuesday, August 1st. To host a block party, please visit the website at crystalmn.gov. You can request council members, you can request fire, police, to join your party. Council will host a budget work session on August 3rd at 6:30 p.m. in the council chambers at City Hall via Zoom. Next council meeting is Tuesday, August 15th, 7 p.m. in the council chambers at City Hall. You can attend via Zoom as well. City council meetings and work sessions are open to the public. Current and previous meetings are available for your viewing and listening at our website, crystalmn.gov. Are there any other announcements? Yes.
Just the reminder of the change in ribbon cutting on August 2nd, from dog park to disc golf ribbon cutting at Bassett Creek at 6 p.m.
And there's a 7 o'clock neighborhood meeting for that. Just a reminder, if you live in that neighborhood, be there at 7 o'clock for that. All right. With that, looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
John, looking for a second. Taji?
Second.
All right, all members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries.